Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. I want to take a look at the table saw with you. The table saw is one of the most versatile machines that we have in our shop. It's also one of the most dangerous, and so it's really important that you guys understand the different parts of this machine and how to use it and how to be safe on it. So let's take a look at that. We have two different table saws in our shop. You can see both of them right now. The first one, this is our primary table saw right here that you're going to do most of your table saw work on. The other is on the opposite corner of the center island here in the shop. Joiners on the sides, table saws on the ends. Now, both of our table saws are the same in many of their features. However, our primary table saw here has some additional safety features, which is why we're going to use this one as our primary machine for most of our cuts. So let's take a look at the major parts of the table saw. Obviously, the first and the most obvious is the table. Large cast iron surface with a long extension out to the right side that gives us a lot of capacity for running different size materials through this machine. Next, we've got our rip fence. And the rip fence moves back and forth easily like this. It's got a handle on the front that when you press it down, it locks it into position. And on this machine, the rip fence has a tape measure guide that runs along this bar on the front, allowing us to precisely and accurately set the rip fence to give us a material length or width of a certain size. It allows us to do that quickly, easily, and repeatably. Next, we've got our miter gauge. On this machine, the miter gauge lives right down here under the table on the front of the machine. And if I just lift this up, it slides out like that. And then when I'm finished using it, I'm going to return it to that spot. As we know, the miter gauge is used for setting different angles to be able to repeatably cut the same angle with a high level of accuracy and precision. We have a couple of adjusting handles on our table saws. They are in the same place on both machines. They're both located down under the table. So let's take a look at those. So right here on the front of the machine, this handle is going to adjust the height of our blade. So you can see as I rotate this clockwise, the blade raises up, and as I rotate it counterclockwise, the blade lowers down. Every time you use this machine, you're going to set the blade height and verify that it's correct. So we've got to know where that one is. The second adjustment handle is the bevel handle, and it is located on the left side of the machine under the table. And if you watch the blade right here, as I turn this handle, you can see the angle of the blade changing, and you can also see the height adjustment handle rotating here. Okay? Now we can clearly see that the angle, the bevel angle on the blade has changed. Most of our cuts are made at 90 degrees, so it's uncommon that you would need to make an adjustment to the bevel angle on the blade, but it is a possibility, and certain cuts on certain projects may call for that. So you've got to know where you make that adjustment on the machine. And again, that's on the left-hand side down here. On our SawStop table saw, our primary table saw, let's take a look at our power switches and power supply. So you'll notice we've got a large red paddle that says push to stop, pull to start, and then we also have a power switch. This particular saw is equipped with technology that senses if your finger touches the blade, and if it does, it triggers a braking system to protect you and reduce the possibility of injury. So when we turn this machine on, it's a two-step process. The first thing we need to do is we need to flip on this power switch. Right now, the dust collector in the shop is turned off, so nothing's going to happen. But I flip this switch on, And the machine is going to run through a series of self-checks. We have a red and a green indicator light on the front, and those lights are going to blink as it runs its self-checks. And when it is ready to operate, only the green light is going to be turned on. That tells you that the system is on, it's functioning correctly, and it's ready to go. With just that green light on, then we can pull out on this paddle to turn the blade on. We can make our cuts, and then when we're finished, we're going to push this paddle back in. There is also, in case you forget, on the left side of our power box here, there is a sticker that tells you what all of the different codes mean. Okay? So it's really important that you know that you've got solid green. That means the saw is ready. If you have anything other than solid green, you need to be looking at this label right here and talking to your instructor for specific information on how to proceed. Let's take a closer look at the blade, the splitting, the riving knife or the splitter, and the table insert. These are all important things for you guys to be aware of. So first of all, when you look at our blade, you can see that the teeth are pointing forward towards the front edge of the table. When we turn this on, the blade is going to rotate in that direction, and as we've seen before on other machines, we're running our material against that rotation, and that's what allows us to have control while we're making our cuts. Now the table insert right here is important. You never run a table saw without a table insert because it supports your material right here at the cut point. If your material is not supported right here at the cut point, then as soon as the blade touches your material, it's going to try and pull it down inside the table. So you must have this table insert in place. On this machine, to remove the table insert, we've got to lift up on this little silver handle right here, and then we can lift this out. And now we can see down inside our table a little bit. Our riving knife right here is a device that sits perfectly in line with the blade, and it really helps reduce the possibility of a kickback by reducing the possibility of our material rotating into the backside of the blade. When we get to our safety video, we'll look closer at kickback and what causes it. But our riving knife is really going to help reduce the possibility of that kickback. Now, we have another device that we can use on this machine that helps protect us from the blade and reduce the possibility of a kickback. And it is this guard that's mounted on a spreader. Okay, and the spreader does the same thing that the riving knife does. It reduces the possibility of your material rotating into the blade. Now, the other thing that this guard has on it is it has these anti-kickback pawls. Okay, it's got a small set and a large set. And what these are going to do as your material runs through is they're going to reduce the possibility of your material being kicked back because these little teeth are going to grab into your material. When we look at our setup video, I will show you how to make the switch between our guard and our riving knife. Our preference is that for your rip cuts, we're using the guard because it gives you a little bit more protection. It also helps control dust a little bit better. But you absolutely will not run this machine without either the riving knife or the guard in position. Now, like I said, the table saw is one of the most versatile machines in our shop. The primary function that you guys are going to use it for is making rip cuts. And a rip cut is a long cut, typically, that's parallel with the grain. So we're putting our good face down on the table, we're putting our best edge up against the fence, and we're running our material through or ripping our material down to a specified width. Now we can also make a miter cut at the table saw. And to do that, we're going to use either one of our pre-made sleds, or more commonly, we're going to use our miter gauge. And I can loosen the handle on this, and I can adjust this. Let's adjust it to 15 degrees. The end of the miter gauge slides into the T-slot in the table. And then, holding my material tight against the miter gauge, I can run it through, and that will cut the ends of my boards exactly to 15 degrees, or to whatever angle I have my miter gauge set to. Earlier, I showed you how we can bevel or angle the blade relative to the table, and with the blade beveled, we are able to make rip cuts that give us not a 90-degree angle, but maybe a 45 or a 30-degree angle on our edges. And that's a cut that you may need to make depending on the plans that you're working on and what your project calls for. Now, we can also make a different type of cut called a dado cut or a rabbit cut. And those two cuts are similar. And when we do those in our shop, we're actually going to use our other table saw. So let's swing over there. We'll take a look at some of the features on that machine, and we'll also take a look at what exactly a dado and a rabbit cut are. All right, so over here, we are at our Delta table saw. It's got the same blade height adjustment handle right here on the front. It's got a bevel adjustment over here on this machine. It's actually on the right-hand side as opposed to the left. We've got our rip fence right here that unlocks and moves and locks back into position the exact same way as our other machine. Our power controls here on this one are much more simple. It's just a straight on and off. This machine does not have the technology that senses if your finger has come in contact with the blade. So we need to be a little bit more careful over here. Although, on any of our machines, we are never going to assume that the technology will protect us. We are always going to protect ourselves by doing the right thing. Now, we talked about dado and rabbit cuts. And what that means, a dado is simply a channel through the material. We're not cutting all the way through. We're cutting a little U-shaped channel in our material. And oftentimes we do that to create a channel for a shelf to fit in. It makes our shelves extremely strong by having them inset into the material. So if we look closely at the blade that's in this machine, what you can see is it's actually not one blade, but it's two blades sandwiched together, and that's going to allow us to cut a wider channel. We can also change this blade. We can make this blade even wider. It'll go all the way up to about 3/4 of an inch wide. So you can cut a nice wide channel in a single pass at this machine. When we talk about making a rabbit cut simply means that we're bringing our fence right up to the blade and we're cutting that dado right on the edge of the blade. So it's more of an L-shaped cut as opposed to a U-shaped channel. Both of those cuts, I will demonstrate how to do those when we get to our operation videos for the table saw. So those are the primary features on our table saws. Now the last thing I want to show you guys and just kind of point out that underneath the extension table on both of our machines, we've got a cabinet with drawers and pullouts. And this is where we're going to keep a lot of our adjusting tools, our wrenches, our extra saw blades, our push sticks, and our other attachments that we use at the table saw. So when you're looking for an adjusting tool for the table saw, that's going to be the first place that you want to check, is in that cabinet under the extension table. In the next couple of videos, we'll take a look at how to set up the table saw, get it ready for your cuts, how to be safe on the table saw, and then we'll have a series of videos showing the different types of cuts that we can make here at the table saw.